Up next, we will watch a panel of investors who will share their bets they're going to make for 2021. Over to you, Mar.
Thank you everyone for tuning in and joining Investors Unleashed, the bets they're making for 2021. My name is Maud Mauson Mock, and I'm joined here today by three great panelists. First off, we have Anis Uzzaman, General Partner at Pegasus Tech Ventures, and Irina Haivas, Partner at Atomica, and finally, Luca Bocchio, Partner at Excel. Welcome everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Great. Maybe we'll just start off with everybody introducing themselves a bit. So, Anis, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me at this event. My name is Anis Uzzaman, and I'm the general partner at Pegasus Tech Ventures. We're a Silicon Valley-based venture capital firm, and we have invested some of the amazing companies like SpaceX, Bird, 23andMe, Quibi, and Triller. So we are based in Silicon Valley, invested in more than 180 companies worldwide, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. And Irina?
Hi, everyone. I'm Irina Haivas. I'm a partner at Atomico. We are a VC fund out of London, focused on Europe. Some of the companies we invested in that you may know of are Klarna, GraphCore, MessageBird, among others. And we are a generalist fund. We focus across kind of enterprise, consumer, and frontier tech as our sector of focus.
Okay, thank you very much. And Luca, over to you.
Hey, hi everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Luca from Excel. We have a global venture capital firm with presence in Europe, US, and Asia. And we've been privileged and fortunate to back many of the technology outstanding companies that have been changing the way we live, either as consumer or professional in our organization, such as Facebook, Slack, Dropbox, among others. And I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, let's just begin. So 2020 has undeniably been a tough year. So I think a lot of people are curious to know whether VCs kept investing. So let's begin with you, Anis. Did you make significant investments during the pandemic?
Yes, actually, this pandemic has been great for us. We have been able to invest in some of the significant, industry-changing platforms or startups. One of the investments that we made is called Quibi. It is a company started by HP CEO, former CEO Meg Whitman, and DreamWorks co-founder Jeffrey Katzenberg. It's a short video content platform similar to YouTube, but people make professional videos, professional grade videos. The videos are 4 to 12 minutes long. This created a huge buzz. They launched in April-May timeframe. And then since, the media has been all over them and they're doing great. I also invested in a social short content platform, video content platform called Triller, which is, they call it American TikTok. And that tool has done well as well. So the pandemic has kept us pretty busy.
Okay. How about you, Irina? How's the investment year been for Atomico?
I would say equally busy, and it's getting busier in the second half from what I can see. In terms of kind of, what we've been focused on, obviously, at the beginning of the pandemic, for the first couple of months, we were more inward focused and made sure that all our portfolio companies are set up for success and set up adapted to somewhat to the new realities. But otherwise, we remain very active, and I think it's proven how adaptable human beings are and how quickly we've just moved on to a new reality. In fact, we probably got to see more companies because we saved travel time. The hardest part is always, not being able to see the founders you work with in person and the teams you work with in person. So that's something we had to kind of compensate for with more frequent virtual interactions. But yeah, I would say very active, and our fundamentals in what we invest have remained the same, and our belief in technology in a way has never been stronger.
All right. So, Luca, was there any lull at Excel this year, or has it just been straight on investing throughout everything?
Oh, echoing what my colleagues has just said, I think it's been pretty busy year by global standards, and it's been twofold, right? One, by working closely with our portfolio companies and supported them in a time of stress, I would say, because not just going well or not well, it is the very central point of what our entrepreneurs were thinking. But at the same time, I think the problem that I've been facing has been running organization, going remote in a matter of a couple of weeks, hiring new people and onboarding new people only on a remote basis. There was a lot of adaptation that our entrepreneurs needed to make, and us together with them. So we've been focusing a lot on that front, and obviously at the same time, we've been adapting to this new normal in terms of making investment on a remote basis, because clearly we are a people business that are investing people first and foremost. So getting to know people only over video is not always that straightforward, and you need to take a bit of time to adapting your processes accordingly. But in many ways, it's been quite fascinating to see how smooth have been the transition that we all have been able to make.
And I mean, you mentioned these changes that, I mean, everybody has felt them, and there's been, they've been accelerated. Like the changes in our work environment have been accelerated by COVID-19. Irina, what does that mean for you as an investor? Like, have you changed how you yourself approach projects or your emphasis as a VC?
I don't think we've changed our emphasis. I think some of the sectors and some of the areas and the trends we've been monitoring have, if anything, been accelerated. So we've very much kept that focus. I think in terms of how we adjusted, as I said, we probably took more meetings than less in some ways because we've traveled less. We've had to, as Luca said, adjust to this reality of not being able to see people as much in person and founders we invest in, and finding other ways to build that relationship with the founders and the teams. But yeah, otherwise I think that's as I mentioned, there's a stronger belief that technology will be accelerated by events like this, and there's a lot of opportunities for companies out there once they've managed to do the short-term adaptations.
And Luca, you already mentioned working with your portfolio companies during on a fully remote basis. So, I mean, what was the biggest adjustment that you made? And did that also mean that you were spending more time on your portfolio companies rather than acquiring new ones?
No, I would say what I was trying to mention was clearly, as a board member, you tend to spend significant of your time in person with the entrepreneur and the board of the company that you invested in, and that's something that you cannot do at the moment, or we have not been able to do that much in the last 6 months. So at the beginning was a lot of adaptation for me, for really changing the way I interacted with my entrepreneurs, but also the way I help them on a weekly basis, right? For example, hiring new profiles, hiring new executives and really interviewing them, or trying to dig deeper into specific areas of the company that I was not spending that much time before. And I think that required much more frequent interaction, maybe shorter, but definitely we instaurated a very frequent touch base with all our core companies at the end of the day. And that has been something also nice that I personally enjoyed, because at the time to really effectively spend more quality time with my entrepreneurs. At the same time, I would say has also facilitated from our fund perspective the best practice sharing among different companies. So I think that has happened even more than before. I think we have tried as much as possible to facilitate that sharing, especially because so many different companies were facing the same difficulties and the same hurdles. So we have organized more ad hoc events and more meetups on a remote basis for specific topics, such as how to run your sales organization on a fully remote basis, or how to rethink your marketing approach in such a different ecosystem, or how to onboard new people only on a remote basis, and other teams like this one that were really top of mind for many entrepreneurs. I mean, that has been a good example of an asset activity that we've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, of
one
course,
of the
this
things,
is something that all companies have been going through. And you, and he's like, have you also been seeing that the companies that you're managing, that they have different approaches to it, or something that you could share between them, how to solve these issues that we all have to deal with this year?
so I think, most of the companies faced a common problem is that when their money is going to run out and how difficult it's going to be to fundraise during this pandemic. Um, Actually, most of the investors, I will say that, I mean, three of my colleagues here, I think, you're all investing as usual, but in many cases, what has happened, we have seen that the investors have become very, very conservative about the whole thing. So a lot of startups are wondering that how they can continue to fundraise when their runway is going to run out. And in general, I think, as you know, between one fundraising, sequence to another, it takes about 18 months apart. So a lot of the startups will be running out of money during this pandemic time. So we have to give them a lot of advice how to manage the remaining capital they have, how they can reduce down cost, how they can make sure that they keep their investors, their customers, and their employees informed, because that is also part of the ecosystem, that you keep everyone informed about their expectation and set the right expectation during this pandemic time. So in terms of our existing portfolio, I think that is something that we have tried to do, to educate them on managing, how to manage the remaining capital, how to manage expectation of their customers, colleagues, and employees, and at the same time how to prepare for the next fundraising and have a very strong plan.
Irina, is this something you felt as well? Have you felt that the startups are looking more towards VCs in terms of advice on how to get through this period?
Yes, is the short answer. Obviously, I think it's not just about how to get through like the fundraising, but as Luca said, there's just like a whole new set of challenges that you have to deal with. Adapting, moving from an offline culture to a remote or hybrid culture, hiring remotely, doing sales remotely, doing pitches remotely, and your fundraising remotely. I think those were all just each and every one of them is a topic in and of itself, where founders either obviously want advice from their board, want to share experiences with other founders and entrepreneurs. And so that's definitely been a topic. I think on the fundraising, the companies that we have prolonged the runway of most of the companies, and obviously it's a natural thing to do. At the same time, those that were out fundraising did it deliberately. They were obviously good companies succeeding and I can't say we had significant issues doing those follow-on fundraises so far. But I'm aware that we don't know what's going to happen in the next 12 months and how the rest of the economy is going to be impacted. So the jury is still very much out there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I mean, everybody had to go through this, even VCs themselves. And Luca, you mentioned that you were kind of sharing insights between companies, but did Accel also learn something from their startup? Because I mean, it's not like Accel had all the answers on how to do remote work.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, as I said, right, sharing best practices at the end of the day is not that we own those best practices. It's because some of our portfolio companies, some of our entrepreneurs and leaders among those companies have been able to successfully crack few areas, right? And so we felt it was good and useful for our entrepreneurs as a whole to learn about best practices created by others. Clearly, we learned a lot. And by the way, even our small internal organization needed to adapt. Also, from our hand, we needed to adapt on how to switch on a fully remote basis. I think the reality is that has been a test for each one of us.
But now Anis, have you noticed if there are any particular areas that actually grown significantly during the pandemic? So, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. There must be some areas that are actually seeing a growth at the moment.
Yeah, so I think a lot of areas have done well. And you talked about adjustment and adaptation to the new environment. I mean, we as VCs also looking into how to invest in more sectors that are becoming hot during this pandemic. So one of the areas that have done really well is touchless delivery. And when it comes to touchless delivery, it is not only about Instacart or Postmate type of companies who have come up with touchless delivery system, but we have also seen robots like Neuro, one of the startups that have delivered with an autonomous little vehicle, LSV, low speed vehicle. We have also seen a huge surge and growth in the e-learning space. A lot of kids are stuck at their home, and it was right before summer, and they could not take any classes. So a lot of schools have tried to patch together a system, and then Zoom and Skype and telephone and different other things. But some of the startups have done well during this time. One of the San Francisco based company, OutSchool, has done fabulous. Even in India, this e-learning space has done well. Baiju is one of the companies that have grown significantly during this system. So e-learning was another system that has done well. Even like remote medical systems, those type of companies, and remote treatment over online has done well. Companies like Sensely, Lark, companies like 98.6, they have done really well. Even Amwell has done significantly well. So these are some of the sectors: education, healthcare, right? Remote healthcare system, touchless delivery. These are some of the segments that have done significantly well. And of course, e-conferencing system. And some of the large corporations have come forward with their system. People like Zoom, who comes from a startup background, have done significantly well as well. While it is not connected to the pandemic, some of the other areas that have done well are the space and exploration side of it. As you've seen, you have seen a lot of news of, SpaceX going to the space station for the first time with their astronaut, and this is the first, tour by a private company. So we have seen some growth in that area as well.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of sectors that are growing, but Irina, do you feel like there's also some sort of change in the innovation landscape? So not just individual sectors of different technologies, but the landscape in itself.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we knew even before this crisis, and one of the reasons we were bullish on Europe from the early days, is that innovation comes from everywhere, and now it's even more obvious that it's becoming more and more distributed. And in some ways, what we're hearing from the smaller hubs is that COVID actually can be an equalizer between these like bigger and smaller hubs of innovation, and it essentially widens access to talent, to capital, to people and expertise that otherwise may have been difficult, may have required you to have a network in a certain country. But now that people don't go on planes, they're much more open to taking a call on Zoom. So actually the sales moving to Zoom is an advantage for some companies that don't have now to set up an office in the US and can actually do the sales, have the same access by being, in their home countries. Same for talent, and same for investors. So in a way, it's a great opportunity, or it's a window of opportunity for entrepreneurs and companies to kind of embrace this and spread that innovation quicker.
And do you feel like this has changed on a personal level for you? Like, do you view startups differently? I don't know. Do you feel, any internal change when it comes to how to approach new opportunities?
I mean, I think we as a firm have always been, we started very much with a European kind of belief, with European ecosystem belief. And we've always been very focused on trying to be open-minded on all the hubs, not just the big hubs. Obviously, we spend naturally more time in some of the bigger hubs. And so I don't think that's necessarily has changed. At least my personal view. I come from one of these small hubs, so I'm a believer that you can do that. But I think it just made it easier for companies. I think it's made it easier, made it more accessible as a kind of what the entrepreneurs locally feel. That's what I've been hearing from some of these ecosystems.
So they might be less
again
afraid
an acceleration.
to reach out.
It's not like not necessarily afraid, but you may say, well, I'll go there in this place at some point, but now you will take a call next week, right? And also they have more space. People have more space in their diaries to connect quicker. And it's less dependent on the physical presence. You don't necessarily have to go to an event and connect with people. You can just do it online. I think it's partly physical barriers and partly mindset.
And how about you, Luca? Are there any less obvious areas of the market that you've been focusing on during the last few months, or different hubs?
Yeah, I mean, I think Irina is right? So I think effectively Europe has already demonstrated before this pandemic that innovation can come from very different hubs, even smaller one and even less obvious one, particularly for software. So I think as an example, in our portfolio of Axel, we do have software companies that are being created in 37 different cities in Europe. If you think about that number, it's quite special, right? Because if you compare that with the US, for example, you will never see such a distribution. And this was already evident before COVID hit, and now has been accelerated because exactly for the reason Irina mentioned, right? So the barriers somehow got completely reduced. And I think this is a valid point specifically for software, but not only limited to software. For example, I'm spending significant time at the moment with B2B marketplaces, which I think are a very fertile area, especially for Europe, given the great heritage that Europe has when it comes to different industrial hubs and industrial ecosystem and industrial capabilities created toward centuries. And now we see this as an interesting category that can benefit from the realization coming from both small and medium enterprise, but also larger enterprise, that they need to find different ways for either marketing their product, either finding their suppliers, and also embracing more software and technological help in the way they manage the whole workflow in their sales processes. So we're very bullish on that front. I think that's a less obvious area of innovation where we've seen not that much funding until this year, but we're very much bullish about it. And obviously beyond this, I think there are so many areas of software as a whole that are less obvious. I think consumer software is still very nascent in many ways, and I think that's another area that somehow will be interesting to follow in the next few years, because I mean, in a way, all consumers are getting exposed to specific tools that are using for either the pleasure of the work, whether you're working for a company or you're working as a freelancer. And I think you're searching for way more solution than you tended to do before. I think all of us got exposure to more time on our laptops, on our iPad, on our phones, and we're looking for solution on how to improve efficiency in what we do from a working perspective, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody can agree with that. That's had to stay at home for a while now. But we've been talking a lot about this year, 2020. But I mean, we also need to look towards the future. So Irina, how do you foresee next year? Are you optimistic about the investment landscape in 2021?
I think as we look at these global events and we just kind of look at what happened in the past in other kind of crises of this sort, we've normally seen that global crises have been an accelerator for innovation and for creativity in general. And therefore, technology is in a way well placed and better placed than many other sectors to actually be accelerated in this time, because some of the things that technology brings, like digital transformation, like all the other aspects that Luca mentioned about, like solutions for this hybrid world, are needed now when people become aware that they need them, while before they may have been a bit more optional. And so, to use a concept from Taleb, who wrote Black Swan, we think that technology can be anti-fragile, as in strive in a chaos or in crisis more than be broken by it. And therefore, there isn't really like an area that we can say, well, we don't believe in, or we would not. There's a sequence, that there's a timing of the market and the solutions and the entrepreneurs working on some of these areas. But overall, as a sector, European technology, we remain very bullish on it.
Anis, do you foresee any changes in 2021? I mean, is there any changes in the funding landscape in terms of are you seeing different investors cross continents invest more?
I feel that people are holding back in Silicon Valley. I mean, as I said, some of the investors are being pretty conservative during this time, so they are just waiting for this to be over, and they will go with full force. I feel that people will invest more into 2021. Things are going to be very positive with the vaccine in place. Most probably, will not have this pandemic, and things are going to turn into a very positive scenario. A lot of the sectors are going to do very well. 5G will see a lot more innovations. A lot of startups will be playing, into the 5G space. We have already started seeing flying cars, infrastructure, and many other things. So I'm sure that I keep a very positive outlook for 2021, and I encourage all the entrepreneurs to come up with great ideas in 2021. We're going to make it a great year for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And you, Luca, you mentioned you're bullish on B2B solutions in a sense and optimizing workflow. Is that your biggest projection for 2021?
I mean, it is very hard to make projection as always, right? But I think by nature, doing this job, I'm a very much optimist person. So I think it is fair to expect from next year that we will continue to see incredible evolution when it comes to software penetrating more enterprises in general, as I said before, but also we continue to see innovation on the consumer front. I think the reality is that the secular tailwinds that were in place before have been accelerated, and this acceleration will allow new entrepreneurs and current entrepreneurs already in the market to continue to foster innovation and improve consumer services as well. So I think it's hard to predict that the environment will see a reduction in the level of innovation that we've seen so far. I think when it comes to funding, it is impossible to predict, but I think forget for a second a bit of volatility that is quite natural. I think we're living in a very healthy moment when it comes to funding. I think it still remains a good time to be an entrepreneur. People need to remember this. I think if you look at the grand scheme of things, the last 10 years has been amazing. And it's fair to admit that this trend will not stop. Maybe we will see some moment of correction when it comes to level and the quantity of liquidity going in different areas of the market. But I think the secular trends also of money coming to the venture world will not stop.
So based on this acceleration of innovation, are there any advice you can provide to entrepreneurs that might be looking to funding or launching their ideas in 2021? So maybe start with you, Irina.
I always hate to provide general advice, to be honest, other than it's a good time to be an entrepreneur. I guess one area we haven't touched upon, and maybe it's just worth mentioning, is the diversity angle. I guess one point is that, in this time when you're adjusting your business model, adjusting the way you work, you may deprioritize some areas like DNY, and in the previous 2008 events that has clearly gotten deprioritized. However, at the same time, it's a great opportunity if you don't deprioritize it to actually access strong talent. It's the access to talent is better and maybe easier now to convert, as some of the companies have laid off people or just aren't doing that well. So I would say, keep an eye on the less obvious areas as well that are not urgent but equally important.
You also mentioned there was a less of a threshold in terms of booking meetings across cities and stuff. So do you think we'll see more, for example, in the European ecosystem, do you think we'll see more US or Asian funding coming in now that people don't need to fly between continents?
We've been seeing that happening over the last couple of years already, and there's no reason why that would stop, to be honest. And so I think, yes, it's probably something that will continue, and it's also something that's healthy. Some of those investors are critical for later stage rounds where companies need to raise larger amounts and there may not be that many kind of pure European investors. And so, yeah, I would say in general, any type of access is being broadened by this. And I'd obviously advise entrepreneurs to embrace this and take advantage of it.
So, Enis, how are you going to go into 2021? Full optimism?
We're going to go with full optimism. I mean, this year we're investing in the same pace as we did last year, but next year, I feel that our investors who are investing in us will also feel positive. In our model, we also partner with 35 large corporations who are our investors in some sense. I'm sure that they will feel a lot more positive next year. And they're already in the process of exploring new areas that came out because of a result of this pandemic, and we'll be investing in those new areas as well.
All right. Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to leave 2020 behind in one sense or another, but 2021, we are quite optimistic. I want to thank you so much for joining today and having the time to meet us here at TNW 2020. Irina, Luca, and Anis, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.